what does work for different systems. If we want to balance top-down and bottom-up, the challenges in Pakistan are going to be very different from those in Australia and Poland. Dr. Kasimlaka, looking at the challenges that you've met, how much can and should it learn from other systems, and how much has to be homegrown? In other words, how much has to come from leadership and how much from teachers and civil society? For example, the Citizens Foundation as an agent, a catalyst for change.
Well, I think you're making a very good point. How much should come from outside and how much should be indigenous? I think the people within the country should feel these are our reforms and not something that has been encouraged by, imposed by a donor agency or by a friendly country, because that's the best way to kill off the sense of ownership. So the important part is we have to, whoever is helping to create reforms, whether they are operations like the ones that Sir Bentley Michael is organizing, Michael Barber is organizing, or anyone else. We have to create a momentum within. That momentum starts with teachers, who then speak to the parents on our behalf. We speak to the parents as policymakers.
But do teachers have any power?
Oh, we have to empower them. If we don't empower teachers and head teachers...
That's another hour-long debate on its own.
That's absolutely. And if we don't empower them, we are going to be dead in the water.
Okay. Let's go to Jacek. Looking at Poland now, there's been obviously this very big increase in performance in Polish schools, in results. What would be needed to make more progress, to balance the roles of the central ministry and those in schools that we've just heard from Dr. Kasim?
Now we very often talk about social capital, and we want to increase social capital in our local community and to figure out how we can develop skills which can help and attitudes which are important for social capital. And we should also about social capital within school, in school.
Social capital, what's that mean?
So it means trust, cooperation. It means care by teachers, for students, that is place for it. And it's very often when top-down reforms with very good intention, but when they go through different layers of administration, they get very bureaucratic one, and they are implemented only on a superficial way. So even if central government wants to, teachers care better about students, and central government wants to have better instruction, is going through this administration here. When power relationship is involved between administration and schools, it distorts a lot of information. So I think that this is place for other institutions like non-governmental organization or sometimes academia, sometimes local community to really interact with schools, and government should leave space for it. In their reform, when they set up system, they should be in such a way decentralized or give autonomy for teachers, school principals.
Governments aren't very good at leaving space.
Yeah,
they like to micromanage.
Yeah, but
so
this is what
unlikely to happen, isn't it, Jacek?
Yeah, the central government is some way selfish. They want, we would do reform. We know what is good, and they are doing this top down. And there is place for non-governmental organization when we can experiment with something. It's much more cost-effective when non-governmental organization is working with schools because there is learning loop between school and outside agency which can trying to help the school. So we can craft our tools for schools which are better suited to particular conditions than it is very difficult to do is for government, even for school administration to help schools. We need others to help schools.
I'm going to come to a sort of final question in a moment. But Minister, you obviously want, very briefly if you would, because then I want to take what you have to say and then Tom Bentley about Tom thinks most good learning takes place outside schools, which is interesting. But Minister, very briefly if you would.
Juste pour rebondir, je vais peut-être dénoter, mais moi je vais vous dire, je pense que l'enseignant dans sa classe, le proviseur, le chef d'établissement, il est plus qualifié que, avec le respect que je leur dois, le recteur, le ministre, pour savoir quelle est la pédagogie qui doit être adaptée aux élèves qu'il a dans sa classe. Et donc je pense que le bon système, c'est celui qui a un bon équilibre entre les orientations nationales, et je suis dans un pays qui a choisi que l'éducation soit nationale, et pas transférée aux collectivités locales, à des États. Donc l'État est là pour fixer le cap, pour offrir des garanties, des diplômes nationaux, le recrutement des enseignants au niveau national, des examens nationaux, ça c'est très important, mais fixer le cap et laisser des marges de manœuvre pour différencier la pédagogie et l'adapter à la diversité, l'hétérogénéité qu'on évoquait tout à l'heure, compte tenu de la massification du système éducatif.
Okay. Exactly, room to maneuver, that's the space that Jacek talked about. Tom Bentley, basically you say whole system reform has to embrace not just school but community at home, which is repeating basically what Jacek said, so no argument there.
No argument there. I mean, in one sense, when you think about children and youth and their development, I think in any country a child will still spend most of their waking hours outside of school hours. And so it's the wider environment as well as the institution of school that we need to think about in shaping their learning potential. But the second crucial point, and I think it has come out of the discussion, is when we talk about systems now, we have to have a broader view of what the system is, understanding the home, the parent, the community, the online network, the employer, the private sector. And then we have to be systematic about trying to forge those connections across those different elements in order to drive and support a vision of learning.
Many disparate elements, you've got to put them together. So Michael, before you repeat that, because you may well include this, I'm going to give you 30 seconds each, because yesterday we didn't take anybody online or from the audience, and we're running out of time because the quality of this debate is so good. Give me in 30 seconds, starting with Sir Michael, 30 seconds please only, gentlemen, your best direction for achieving effective reform.
Okay, well, it's a great question. Look, I think picking up Tom's last point, the role of a government is to make sure that everybody gets educated to a new, higher standard in the 21st century than happened in the 21st century, not to run the public system. So the role of government is to ensure that everybody in the society gets educated, certainly all the children and young people, and ultimately all the adults as well, not just to run a public system. And that leads to a couple of conclusions. One is, I agree with a key point in Andreas's point, that professional autonomy needs to be within a collaborative culture. So how do you create that culture within the teaching profession? And then the people leading reform at the centre, the government, should be creating challenges to the public system. They should be inviting, for example, charter schools, or in Pakistan, low-cost private schools, to provide a challenge to the system. So you're not relying on one monopoly provider. And then in this out-of-school area, you really need to create the kind of social capital that was referred to by our Polish colleague. And last point I want to make on aid. Aid programs should support country-led programs. So you want a great country-led reform that aid supports, not a great aid program.
Minister, your 30 seconds magic wand for achieving effective reform?
30 secondes pour réformer l'éducation nationale française, bon courage. Non, je considère que, d'abord, les systèmes éducatifs, contrairement aux caricatures, ne sont pas irréformables. Moi, quand je suis devenu ministre de l'Éducation nationale, tout le monde m'a dit bon courage, en me disant c'est impossible. Non, je pense que les systèmes éducatifs sont réformables. D'abord, comme je le disais au début, ils s'adaptent en permanence et, contrairement aux caricatures, les enseignants sont parfois les premiers à demander ces adaptations, à demander une modernisation du système, à demander une évolution pour s'adapter au monde qui les environne. Simplement, il y a un certain nombre de conditions. Il y a un mouvement permanent et puis de temps en temps, il y a nécessité de réformes systémiques, mais qui doit faire l'objet d'une adhésion. Voilà. On ne peut pas réformer contre, on ne peut pas réformer de front, et donc il y a nécessité d'adhésion. Ça peut être adhésion via les élections, ça peut être adhésion via un processus de concertation massif auprès des enseignants et des parents d'élèves. Et voilà comment je vois le processus de réforme permanente et continue.
Okay. Everybody needs to be on board. Yeah, we're finding a common theme here, Jacek.
We have to inculcate in our reforms much more energy of individual teachers and school principals. And we use a notion in Poland, learning school. So in school, the teachers are working collaboratively. They look at results. They look how they are working with students, and together to find culture. within school and with help outside school. So teachers could work together and really focus on the learning process, how learning process is going on for students.
Okay, Tom Bentley?
Well, we've agreed on many dimensions, but one that I might just try to focus on as getting to the essentials of how you achieve effective reform and how you keep it moving goes back to this question of political vision and how you mobilize in order to sustain change. Of course, it's true that you need political leadership and consistent vision, but the politicians who stay a long time in office are the ones who learn how to create legitimacy for what they're doing, as well as how to kind of use their political capital to make specific changes. And in education, I think that means building, mobilizing support for the idea that these dramatic improvements are possible. In fact, they're necessary, and politically refusing to take no for an answer, but at the same time staying open as to the means so that new innovations and new sources of energy and dynamism can come into focus over time. And I think that's a rare combination, but it's very potent when you can have it.
Okay. Dr. Shams?
I'm going to move a little bit away from achieving reforms to achieving reforms in a very important area, which is curriculum. We haven't talked about it. In developing countries, there is a great desire by governments and people to include science in curriculum and strengthen that curriculum, because that's the future.
Yep, this is a point well made yesterday afternoon, by the way.
Right, and how do we achieve that objective? Last night, while I was with Dr. Vartan Grigorian, he made a point, and I must give him credit for this. He said that technology is easily adapted and adopted by developing countries or anywhere else. It's easier to adopt. Why don't we use the Trojan horse of technologies to smuggle in science? Worthwhile thought.
Yep, I like that very much. Let's put the lights. Let's get a couple of questions from the floor to involve you. Now, immediately I see number 4. So if you do ask a question, I don't want a statement, otherwise I'll cut your microphone. I assure you that. We haven't got time for statements or, your CV. Can I just have your name and who you want to ask the question of?
Tulicka from Poland. Reform based on standards and tests and accountability lasts with us for a few decades. What do you think about their effects? For example, in the United States, research done by Schatt and Cooper has shown that the students' achievements were lower. In the first decade of this century, Linda McNeil in the USA said the same. Even David Cameron in England last year has said that the achievements of English students are worse and worse. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. So we had a government that came in and said education, education, education. 13 years later, illiteracy rates are higher than ever. So Jacek, do you reply to your countrywoman?
Yes, I think that this is now time to divert from the thinking about this testing system as a driving force. And we agree, almost everyone, we don't know how to really empower students and teachers. This is the direction.
Okay, so Michael?
All systems need to know how well the children are doing at different ages. I think what the reform currently being introduced in Australia, for example, is a good example. Testing children aged 7, 9, 11 and 13 is a good idea if you keep the tests clear and simple. What happened in England is that standards improved and then didn't carry on improving as fast. It's not true to say that there are more people illiterate now than 13 years ago. On the contrary, the system is on the whole improved. It should have improved faster. That's the issue.
Okay. I'm going to take question 3 as a last question because we ran out of time, but I did say she or he could ask it, and I don't want to go back on that.
Okay, Stephen Harris, Australia. Online learning's been touched on by people. We're told that, by 2020, 60% of American secondary schools will be actually taught online. What's online learning going to do to education reform if it brings learning right down to the bedroom and does away with schools?
Great question. Tom?
I don't think online learning will do away with schools, even though occasionally I might wish it did. Online learning can add value to every dimension of the learning process, and it can also support this kind of, the supportive infrastructure that improves quality and enriches assessment and empowers each individual learner and teacher to think harder and learn more deeply about what they're doing. But it's not going to have any of those effects automatically, and it has to be worked into the broader strategies that we've been talking about.
So you're talking again about gradual change. Thank you. I hope people here are a little clearer about how to achieve effective reform. Perhaps what you've heard has sparked an idea here or online. Take those ideas to a headmaster or to your school board or your community representative. You can also continue the conversation on MyWise or Twitter. I wouldn't mind taking a look at my school, which sounds very interesting. Talking about curriculum, bringing science in under cover of darkness, so to speak. Everybody's agreed everybody has to be on board for change. Accountability and performance was mentioned. We now have a full day of wise debates and focus sessions looking at key elements of reform, at such important issues as how to support and empower teachers, how to motivate and engage learners, and what we can learn from the game changers, and many more sessions. And we look forward to exploring those issues with you. My thanks to Sir Michael Barber, Tom Bentley, Sham Kasim Laka, Luke Chattel, Minister, thank you, Jacek STRZEMIECZNY. I've enjoyed being with you. Thank you.